Hello, I'm Maureen Carroll with Anamcara Press, and I'm here today with Margaret Kramar in an interview with authors. Welcome, Margaret. How are you?
I am fine today because it's a really nice day. The weather's great outside. And as soon as we finish this, I want to plant some cole crops, some broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower, because it is time to get them out in the greenhouse and get things going.
It certainly is beautiful. Now, I want to talk with you today and let our listeners and readers hear about your book, Searching for Spencer. And this is a memoir that you wrote, but it's also a deep personal book about the birth and the short life of your son, Spencer. How did you decide to write this book?
I didn't make the decision. I backed into it by accident. A man had asked me to edit his book, and he got feedback from his agents that it wasn't lively enough, that it was too dull and flat. So I emailed him and I said, you need vivid verbs, you need descriptive adjectives, you need to put yourself in the scene. And he still got feedback that he wasn't doing it right. And so I finally kind of got out of patience and I said, do it like this. And then I wrote the scene where we take Spencer to the emergency room the day before he dies. And after I wrote that scene, I pushed back the chair and said, oh my gosh, I have started writing his memoir.
Wow. And you also helped someone else to get their writing in a better place too. That's a really interesting story. Did you encounter other or any obstacles when you were writing?
Yes. I think any time that we write anything, we have problems with procrastination. We have problems fighting the little voice that says, this is no good, I might as well quit, whoever is going to read this. I think someone said that the most difficult part of writing is to adhere the seat of the pants to the chair. And so this actually took me to work on it intensively, and then I would back away and work on it and back away. But also with material like this, it's important to have professional distance. Because if I were just to journal all the grief and hysteria, it would come out and it would not be good. You have to be able, especially with something like this, back up so to the point where you can be more objective about what you were doing.
Now, despite the early prognosis, how did things actually turn out?
He totally exceeded all of the extremely negative diagnoses when he was born. They hinted that he might not even walk or talk. And he did all of those things a few months behind other children, but he turned out to be a really happy, outgoing, bouncy kid who absolutely wanted to do everything that the other kids were doing. And he could, for the most part, do them. And he just did them in his own way. And he was fine.
So I thought I'd share the screen and show a picture of Spencer. So could you, he died when he was only 10 years old. And I know that this is a very sad topic, and a lot of people over the last year have been dealing with grief and the loss of a loved one. But why would anybody want to read a book about the loss of a loved one and this kind of pain and suffering?
Because it's not depressing. Ultimately, it's a book about transformation and hope. We do live in a death-denying and a death-defying culture where we run away from death as fast as we can. And I'm not for 1 minute trying to sugarcoat the extreme pain that we experience when we lose someone we love, but especially now living out here, to watch the progress of the seasons, you realize that death is a part of the natural order of things. And in its own way, it's beautiful that at especially the end of a long life, we can celebrate who someone was and what they accomplished. When you lose a child, yeah, that's a bite, that's a kick. But believe it or not, it changes your life, and it changes your life in many ways for the better. For one thing, you realize that every day is a gift. You don't say, oh, well, tomorrow or next week. You realize that every day is a gift. Every day could be your last. Another factor is that when people used to talk about a beautiful sunset, I used to say to myself, how boring, how stupid. But since his death, I really do get a real kick out of the simplest little things. The weather of every day is gorgeous to me. I mean, we've gotten interested in birds. I want to learn about all I can this summer about Kansas bumblebees. You start to mine into and you start to explore what you have, a lot like those gratitude logs and what they say in the gratitude books. Instead of being angry at what you lack or what you're upset about, concentrate on all the abundance and life and love right in front of you, because it is there. The other factor is that you reorder your priorities. You decide that you want to live the rest of your life so as to honor the person who died. And so I always was kind of a volunteer type and did a lot of service projects. And I mean, if anything, I've increased things like that tenfold, or I've told myself, this is what is important today. And I'll ask myself, I'll say, have you done one thing today to make this world a better place to live in? And if I can't point to one thing, I didn't make a phone call to cheer someone up. I didn't write to my legislator. I didn't progress something that's worth being progressed. I feel I'll do better tomorrow. And it does. It reorients your priorities. And you always have the memory of the person. The person is always there. And you feel the love of just the universe much more. At least I did. So.
Well, you titled your book Searching for Spencer. Can you tell us, how did you search for Spencer?
Right. There have been a lot of memoirs written about the death of a child. Some of them are what I would say overly saccharine. They say, oh, the child was perfect and the family was perfect and blah, blah, blah. And I would say that those are kind of gag a maggot writing, because if we've had children, we know that we are not totally happy with that child every day, that sometimes we really lose our temper and not everything is roses. And so I wanted to write something different. I wanted to experiment with the genre. And so what I did, because I have a background in journalism, is that I went around and interviewed people. I interviewed his teachers, I interviewed the principal, I interviewed friends, I interviewed family members, and I said, when he was growing up, I was so busy. And if I could change one thing, it would be to not have been so busy, to have taken more time just to be with him, just to concentrate on those small moments together. And so I thought, well, what have I lost? Who was he? And thinking perhaps that maybe his teachers were perhaps more zeroed in on what he was doing and thinking every day than I was. And so it was really interesting to get all of their perspectives. And so we meet Spencer, we see Spencer from a lot of different perspectives, as opposed to the obvious chronology of most of these memoirs. They die, you're shocked. And then I also searched for him because I do believe in the afterlife. And I've told people, I had a friend who lately lost her mother, and I said, you'll be hearing from her. That if we open ourselves up to various signs, that the deceased person will communicate with us. It could be through a song. It could be a snatch of something that we read in the newspaper. The letters just stand out and you say, oh, he is saying that to me. And he's in this house. There's no doubt about what's in this house. And he hides he hides things, and then we find them a few days later. And it's more than just forgetfulness. I mean, I will not bore you with all of the things that have happened, but other people share similar stories that right after the death of someone who's beloved, the television will go off in the middle of the day for no reason. The lights start flickering on and off. There are a lot of ways that they do try to communicate with us, to let us know that they are in a far happier place, totally surrounded by love. And some people revolt over the idea that this was part of a divine plan. I mean, I don't. I think nothing happens by accident. I think there are no coincidences. And you reach a point of acceptance where you can say, my life is so much more enriched by having had this child, and even by the fact that he left us early.
Well, I wanted to share, Spencer, one more time. And thank you for sharing with us your very courageous and very interesting book writing journey. So thank you very much, Margaret. And what's your next book? Can you tell us just maybe a little bit about your next book?
My next book is called Girl, a Gender Odyssey. And it's headed in a totally different direction. It's a book about what it has been like to grow up as a girl who became a woman in the last half of the 20th century. It looks at all the subtle and not so subtle ways that we have been second-class citizens, how we have been taught always to be subservient and obedient and complicit and happy, and never to aspire after anything for ourselves. And so it's kind of the evolution of starting out with a girlhood like that and becoming more assertive, claiming more agency over my life. And some of it is funny. I mean, what we believed in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, some of it is hilarious today. But there it is.
Well, I'm really looking forward to reading your second book, and I recommend to everyone who hasn't already read it, Searching for Spencer by Margaret Kramar. It is available through Anamcara Press at anamcara-press.com. It's also available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and your favorite bookstore. Thank you again, Margaret.